Great. So as always with our information sessions, we want to start today with our team's belief about educator preparation and the students across Massachusetts. We believe all students can thrive. We believe all students deserve access to effective educators. We believe that through strong preparation, all educators can be effective on day one. We believe that all educators must support every student in their care. And we believe DESE sponsoring organizations and pre-K-12 schools and districts will need to take action to disrupt inequities. These beliefs have informed each step of the creation of the materials we'll share today and will continue to guide every step of our work moving forward. Last year, as I mentioned, we held information sessions on each of the domains and on the process overall. We heard a lot of positive feedback about those sessions, so we wanted to hold a similar session today to orient you all to the updated review process materials and make sure that they're clear. We hope you'll continue to give us feedback about whether this type of format continues to be helpful or if there are other ways that we can help clarify expectations. For today, our expectations are to share the formal review materials and how they are organized on our website and how they will be used throughout the process, and answer any questions about the materials. All of the materials we discussed today, with one exception that we'll note, will be live on our website by 11 a.m. We were making some adjustments up to the very last moment yesterday, and our IT team has promised that they will be live by then. In the meantime, we'll spend today's session orienting you to those materials so that you can explore them and learn more about the process on your own time. We won't be going into many details about the specifics of the process today. We'll focus on how to navigate the different materials. We've updated the materials to be much more transparent about those steps in the process. So we hope that through exploring them on your own, that will answer many of your questions. And we're always happy to answer additional questions after you've had a chance to review them. Two quick reminders as we're going through the session today. So first, while these materials that are going up on our website today are in the final stage for the first cohort and will largely remain the same for future cohorts, we are always continuing to collect feedback and refine and adjust the materials each year to improve the processes for us and for you. So if you are a few years out from your review, you can know that this gives you a clear picture of what types of things we'll be looking for, even if the materials themselves might be adjusted to help clarify things. Second, we've had a lot of questions about the informal review toolkit. That will also be posted hopefully today and certainly within the next day or two. So you'll be able to see all of the resources for proposing new programs there. And while those materials have been updated to align with the 2023 program approval criteria, the informal review process itself is the same. So today's conversation is going to focus on the formal review where there are more shifts in the process. So we'll start by sharing a quick update on what our team has been doing since last spring when we were seeing you all on a weekly basis. Then we'll talk about what our goals were for the revisions to the formal review process and a quick refresher on the review process stages. And the bulk of today's info session will be spent walking you through the formal review materials that will be posted on our website. And as I mentioned, we'll have time at the end for any questions. This slide probably looks familiar to many of you. We've been using it in different ways for a while now. And I know that there is a lot on the screen. You don't need to read each and every detail. It's just to give you a sense of the work that we've been doing over the past few months on each of these milestones here. So since the spring of last year, we've been dedicating our efforts to finalizing the details of the formal and informal review processes, planning technical assistance opportunities, and building out the updates to the PST and CAP guidelines. We released our guidelines that we had talked so much about last year in September, along with the draft language for the PSTs. In the fall, we also launched the 23-24 Ed Prep Advisory Group, who have been meeting all year. And we've been planning the communities of practice around two key topic areas, and those will begin in just a few weeks. The technical assistance for cohort 1 will be underway as of Thursday. As many of you know, we pushed back the launch of the reviews last year to give a few extra months to all of your organizations and for us, so that rather than launching in the fall is launching this spring. And lastly, we are currently on track to have the PST and CAP guidelines out for public comment this spring, thanks to a huge amount of help and input from the PST and CAP working group. I'm going to turn it over to Kenzie now.
Thanks, Lindsay. Hi, everyone. I'm Kenzie Chin. It's great to see all of you again and see some of you, your names for the first time. So as you know, the formal review process has undergone some major shifts during this revision. We made the revisions with the input of many stakeholders as well as participants in the pilot of what we were calling the flipped review model. The goals of the process revision were that the process would be efficient and streamlined for both DESE and sponsoring organizations, implemented consistently and equitably across sponsoring organizations while recognizing their varied contexts, structures, and sizes, that it would allow DESE to hear authentic feedback from a range of stakeholders impacted by programs, gather a comprehensive evidence base for decision-making, including multiple opportunities for the sponsoring organization to share examples and context, engage external reviewers in meaningful ways, provide clear, actionable, and timely feedback to sponsoring organizations, and drive toward increasingly positive experiences and outcomes for all preparation candidates and the PK-12 students they impact as educators. As we've talked about before, the updated formal review process is divided into 4 major stages across roughly 24 months, though many of those months will not include specific activities for your organization. For example, this includes the 6 months in between the notification and the launch session. Over the course of the launch, initial inquiry, follow-up inquiry, and determination stages, each sponsoring organization will have multiple opportunities to tell its story. On the website, when you first click on the EdPrep page, then the EdPrep review and approval and navigate to the EdPrep toolkits, this is the page that will show up when you navigate to the formal review toolkit. At the moment, IT is working on formatting the website in a way that's more easy to navigate, like you see on this slide, which with each stage of the formal review process separated into a color-coded table. However, in order for you to navigate the page immediately following this session, we'll use the draftier version to show you today. So the first link that you'll see is to a new resource called the Formal Review Interactive Overview. This link won't be live today. However, we will give you a quick preview of what you'll see there in the next few days. The interactive overview is a streamlined interactive website that gives a broad overview of the formal review process. If you're new to the formal review process, need reminders about what's expected at each stage, or need to brief a colleague about what the formal review process is about, this would be a great resource to use. All the information here comes directly from the DESE website or the guidelines for program approval. So while the information isn't new, we hope the format makes it more accessible and digestible. Okay, so Evelyn's going to go ahead and pull up the interactive overview so you can see it briefly. And I am going to make it so that I can share. Okay. The topics that are covered are the overviews of DESE, the Office of Educator Effectiveness, expectations of program approval, the domains and the criteria, the formal review process, and the decision-making process. So you can see it's easily navigable on the left-hand menu. And there's also a search feature. So if you're looking for something more specific, you can just enter it there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start sharing again. The second link you'll see on the formal review page is the formal review schedule. When you click on the schedule link, you'll see a document that's been updated very recently. Unless we've been in contact with you about it, the date for your organization's review has not changed. We wanted to point out, though, that in this document, we've added in this first table, which shows key milestones by cohort. So because of the way we've reorganized the phases of the review with the focus groups and interviews, which we formerly called the onsite, in the middle of the review, we've updated this schedule to be extra clear. So the first two columns show you information that you already have, which is the anticipated review year of each cohort. The third, fourth, and fifth column show you exactly what it means to be in that anticipated review year. What it means for the anticipated review year to be in that year. So for example, for cohort A1, their anticipated review year is 24-25, which means they were notified of their review, that their review was coming up back in spring 2023. Their launch session will be in spring 2024, and their final approval letter will be sent and received in spring 2026. The following pages in the document show the review dates for all SOs, which again, unless we've contacted you, are the exact same document that we shared last year. So underneath the first two links, you'll see links to all the formal review materials organized by stage of the review. We decided to publish these materials in an effort to be as transparent with you as possible about the process and to ensure that our expectations are 100% clear. Like Lindsay said, we do want to reiterate that while these materials are the final versions that will be used for our reviews at this point, our team will continue to refine the materials as we learn more about how to make them more useful and efficient. So while they are going to be helpful for learning about the scope of what we'll be asking you before your review, it won't be helpful to go ahead and start filling them out well in advance of your review. So you might notice that under each stage in the process, there's a document that we've called the planning guide. These are new resources that we've put together to provide clear guidance on the formal review processes. In addition to the 3 technical assistance calls, the planning guides will be great sources of information as you navigate the formal review process. They'll also enable you to come into those technical assistance calls with more context to inform organization-specific questions that you might have. The various planning guides contain information about what to expect during each stage: the launch, initial inquiry, follow-up inquiry, and determination. They describe what the DESE team will be doing, what you should be doing during each step. They explicitly lay out the deliverables for each step so you know exactly what we're expecting from you, and highlight tips that we hope will be helpful for completing each step. So now we're going to walk you through each of the stages of the review and show you what materials you'll interact with during that stage. To start, the launch stage materials that you'll see on the website are the launch stage planning guide, the formal review template timeline, the launch worksheet, the program overview, and the template cover sheet for candidate artifacts. So the launch worksheet is a 2-page worksheet that helps us understand what programs we'll be reviewing during the formal review. And Evelyn's going to go ahead and pull up this document now. Great, thank you. So you can see that the columns are.
Could you zoom in a little bit? Sorry, Kenzie.
Oh, it's okay. Okay, I think that's probably good. The columns are the program number of completers in the last 3 years, whether it meets or exceeds the low enrollment threshold, and what kind of action is required as a result of the number of completers. And then in orange, what your program would like to do going forward. So DESE will pre-populate the first 4 columns that are in blue, and you'll give this form back to us with what you'd like to do going forward with each of the programs. Okay, so Evelyn, you can go to the second tab now. Thank you. And then go ahead and zoom in a little closer on that too. Yeah, perfect. So the second tab in the launch worksheet will inform how we'll plan the interviews and focus groups for the review. It asks about various stakeholders, whether you have them, and if you call them a different name than what we might use, and any other information that might be useful for us to know about that stakeholder group when determining groupings and tailoring materials and questions. Okay, now I will take the share back. Okay. So another piece of the launch stage that you'll need to pay attention to is the program overview. Oh, actually, sorry, Evelyn. You can go ahead and pull up the program overview now. Sorry, I thought I was sharing that one. So as she's pulling that up, I'll just describe a little bit. The overview asks some questions about things that DESE will need to know before the engagement with stakeholders begins. I think that's big enough, Evelyn. That's great. Thank you. The prompts are brief, and we did our very best to keep this part of the inquiry very streamlined, but it will require some attention to complete. So because of the flipped review model, there's not a whole lot that you need to do up front. The program overview will ask you to respond to 6 prompts and then put together some resources and artifacts. And we do realize that the compiling of resources can be cumbersome. So we did our best to minimize what we're asking for and included only what gives us the most valuable information for our review. Yeah, go ahead and finish scrolling through that, Evelyn. Great. Okay, so the 2 other materials that you'll see under the launch stage on the website are the formal review template, timeline, and the template cover sheet for the candidate artifacts. These are fairly self-explanatory, so we won't spend time going over them here, but we would be happy to answer any questions about them once you have a chance to look at them on your own. So during the initial inquiry, the primary document you'll interact with from DESE is the planning guide. We'll also share scheduling templates and additional optional outreach language at the start of the initial inquiry. The initial inquiry, if you remember, includes all the stakeholder engagement, including what we used to call the on-site visit. The initial inquiry planning guide provides an overview of the whole stage, including how to recruit for stakeholder surveys and focus groups. It also provides information about expectations for the welcome meeting, which similarly to the old iteration of the formal reviews will take place at the beginning of the week of focus groups. The planning guide for the initial inquiry has the same format as all the other planning guides. Each step is clearly laid out with what happens during each step, when it happens, helpful tips and deliverables. We won't go into the details now, but this planning guide contains a lot of information about how to plan for specifics of stakeholder engagement. This slide is a reminder about our decision-making process following the launch and the initial inquiry. So again, while our team will not use a formal rubric, the framework on this slide will be used for calibration and will guide all of our decisions. For each criterion, if evidence of impact is consistently positive, this will lead to a MET rating and an optional opportunity for the sponsoring organization to submit further evidence that could lead to a commendation. If evidence is positive or mixed overall with variation across stakeholder groups, programs, or identity groups, DESE will share key evidence with the sponsoring organizations and ask follow-up questions in a targeted worksheet. So that's what we're going to talk about next. Depending on the results of that follow-up inquiry, this might lead to a MET, a finding, or a provisional MET, which means that the organization is on the right track but doesn't yet have the evidence of impact. And if evidence of impact is negative overall or indicates harm to specific groups, this will likely lead to a finding. During the follow-up inquiry, the sponsoring organization will have the opportunity to provide information about how it's addressing the concerns, which might lead the criterion to be moved to a MET. Okay, I'm going to hand it back to Lindsay.
Thanks, Kenzie. And thank you all for your patience as we navigate back and forth between who is sharing. We wanted to show you all of the materials and not lose track of where we were. So we're having Kenzie share some things and Evelyn share others. So the follow-up inquiry materials include the follow-up inquiry planning guide and the targeted submission worksheets. For the worksheets, you'll see that there's one for each domain and one for each type of license within the instruction domain. These worksheets include all of the questions that you might possibly be asked depending on the evidence collected in your initial inquiry. There are two reasons why we might pull in selected questions from the from the full bank. The first is to follow up on places where the DESE and the review team found gaps or inconsistencies. And the other is to learn more about areas that might be highlighted for commendation. We have drafted and are sharing all of these questions in advance to be really transparent with organizations about what might need to be answered. So we hope that they're a very useful tool to look at in preparing for your formal review and understand what types of evidence would be most helpful for each of the criteria. But we again want to reiterate that this is the full extent of the questions. Your organization would not, in virtually any circumstance, be asked all of the questions on any of the worksheets. They are long. So Evelyn is going to pull up a targeted submission worksheet now. Each of the targeted submission worksheets has the same basic format. So this is the first page, and you'll see again in that yellow box at the top, we are reiterating that this is the full bank of questions. You won't be expected to complete all of it. And then on the table below that, you'll see each of the criteria are listed out, along with a column where we'll indicate whether that criterion has been included in the targeted submission. And if it is included, whether that is to address gaps or inconsistencies, or whether it's because DESE or the review team thinks it may warrant a commendation. Your organization can also say, oh, DESE didn't think that CAN 2 warrants a commendation, but we actually think that we're doing something really interesting and exceptional here, and still provide information that might support a commendation. But we also want to give the review team and DESE the opportunity to highlight those places where maybe you don't realize that you're doing something really cool and innovative that would be helpful for others to hear. The third column on that table is where we would list any additional documents or artifacts that might be requested to help us better understand your work in alignment with that criterion. As Kenzie mentioned, when we're requesting documents up front during the program overview, we're being really intentional about only requesting things that will help shape the focus groups, the interviews, and potentially our understanding of the survey responses. And so we may request additional artifacts or documents to better understand specific criteria at the point of the follow-up inquiry. The rest of this document has all of the questions that might be asked in the follow-up inquiry. So for each criterion, you'll see the orange bar, which has the exact language of the criterion. And then the gray and white table below it indicates key sources of evidence where we'll be collecting information about that criterion in the initial inquiry. This isn't an exhaustive list, but these are the likeliest sources where we know that we'll be asking a question that directly aligns back to that criterion. When we update the worksheets to share back with your organization, we'll fill in the last row of that gray and white table with an overview of specifically what we heard during the initial inquiry. It won't necessarily reflect the totality of evidence, but will really highlight either those gaps or inconsistencies so that you can best address them through your evidence, or those areas that we believe might warrant commendation. Next, for each of the criteria, there is a prompt where we will share back our understanding based on the initial inquiry of key structures and systems that your organization already has in place. And this will give you the opportunity to correct any information that we may have misinterpreted or misunderstood, or any significant gaps that might help us better understand the work that you're doing. And then for each of the criteria, there are there will be one or more tables similar to the one you see now. Each of these tables has some information about decisions or structures to help us understand what those structures are, and then follow-up questions to help us understand how you are or will be measuring the impact of those decisions or structures or systems. Thank you, Evelyn. For the determination stage, we only have one resource, the determination stage planning guide. Because at this point, the work transitions from happening on your end and ours to really just going to DESE and the review team doing the work of analyzing all of the evidence and beginning to make recommendations. So there is very little that your organization needs to be doing during this stage, other than continuing to be available if clarifying questions come up. So we produced this planning guide mainly to serve as an informational tool and to build transparency into what's happening on the other side of the process when you're sitting there in that determination phase, waiting to hear back from us. Thank you all so much for engaging with us. We know that that was a lot of material and we walked through it relatively quickly. We hope that that will help orient you to where to look for information and how to navigate the website. I dropped the link in the chat for where you can access the toolkits, both the formal and informal review toolkits once they go live. We'll now stop the recording.